Hey everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I just want to pop in here for a second before we get started with the show and just say the Patreon is live. So if you want to go over there and hang out with us on the Patreon, building that community, that's patreon.com/conscious environment creation. So patreon.com/conscious environment creation. And over there we have promo codes for the bonfire site so you can get a little bit off on your merch, whatever you want to grab over there. But we have behind the scenes footage. You guys can vote on different topics. If you want to be the producer level, you can actually just have whatever you want me to make a podcast about within reason, and I will make it. So let's hang out together. I can't wait to keep building this community with you. All right, on with the show. Hey, welcome back to the Conscious Environment Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am very excited because I got a chance to sit down with Eric and Nicole Griffin this week, and we got a chance to talk about something that seems like it's a little strange on the surface, but we talked about the intimacy of white supremacy. And what we mean by that is, why does white supremacy seem to have to be so very close to BIPOC people in order for it to exist at all? And Erica has some amazing thoughts on that. It was an amazing conversation. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the conversation because I had a lot of fun recording this. This is the best.
The best beauty view, but
awesome. And somebody's saying, if you want white supremacists need to look no further than the Democratic Party. Just so you know, white supremacy doesn't have a political affiliation. You're right. Okay. Good. Very cool. Thank you for pointing that out.
That's a fun.
Let's just jump into it. The way that we normally start the show is, what's your name? What do you do? And where can people find you?
Okay. Is that me first?
That's you first.
Okay. They know you. My name on this app, my name is Nikki G. But I'm Erica Nicole Griffin. I'm based out of Atlanta. I'm a consultant right now. So I work with nonprofits all over the U.S. and in Canada. Half the time they're working on some sort of anti-racist change management. It could be all the time. It could be helping the boards talk through some goals. It could be helping the CEO. We just coached the CEO for 2 years. Right. And we're behind. A lot of times we build long-scale learning programs. We've worked with organizations that have 5 staff members. We work with organizations that have 1,000 staff members. We just signed a contract with one of the largest charities in the United States. That's all I'll say. And the goal is simple. We want to be the type of people that we can be proud of. We want to be on the right side of history. We want to do our work better. We want to stop losing employees of color. We want to stop losing queer employees. We want to stop losing disabled employees. The talent is just leaving faster than we hire it. And they call us. We're literally a 2-person shop. Cool. I work with my best friend, Jamie Joanno, and we consult. We do anti-racist change management kind of in a nutshell.
Awesome. I love that so much. And that's why I wanted to have you on. I actually just started consulting with my daughter's school. The school district in town, the local school district, just reached out to them because I noticed some kind of strange things that were going on. They didn't mention Black History Month. It was really weird at all during February. And my kid came home from school saying, we've been asking the teachers for something about Black history, and they wouldn't do it, or they won't do it, and they said that they need help, and I think a lot of people get nervous about like anti-racism or DEI work or anything like that in the corporate world or in municipalities, school districts, anything like that, but everybody needs it because you have kids, you have employees, you have people that want this diversity or want to feel a part of wherever they are, and they don't, or they can't because of the way that you're running things right now. So I love to hear that you're working with so many groups right now, and making the world a better place, one company at a time.
We hope so. We're trying. I always say I could be doing other things, funner things, but there's a part of me that wants to collude in my own survival, collude in the survival of my children. So I just feel compelled, at least for now,
Yeah,
to,
absolutely.
to ensure safety here in this world.
Oh, that's a big deal. And something what we talk about, because our big topic is going to be white supremacy tonight. And a lot of times when we say white supremacy, I think a lot of people have kind of a misconception as to what it is. So I think for the purposes of tonight's discussion, what is your definition of white supremacy? If someone were to ask you in one of your consultations or one of your workshops, they're like, what does white supremacy even mean?
Yeah, people don't ask me that. They get nervous when they know I'm about to bring it up. So my business partner and I think about white supremacy as the primary oppressive paradigm of our age. And I almost say, some humans live through the Iron Age, some humans live through the Stone Age, some humans have even lived through a Renaissance, if you just focus on Europe. I think we are literally living through the white supremacy age. I pray we survive it. And so I'm all about metaphors and visuals because that's how I organize my own analysis. So a lot of times we say white supremacy is like an umbrella, and that cover is white supremacy, and we use kind of anti-Black racism as the handle, and all these spokes that keep it open are like capitalism and fat phobia and queer phobia. It's not the best metaphor. I've seen other people use the metaphor of a tree, but white supremacy really helps us to justify oppression of other people in order to satisfy our own desire to be supreme. Right? Which is why a lot of us can participate in white supremacy and not be white. Right? If I choose to be a white supremacist as a Black, that's altogether possible and profitable if we want to keep it real. Right? And I think that's our age. I don't think there's a part of the globe where you are fully able to escape it at this point. I wish that wasn't the case. But I love to hear how you kind of encapsulate it in a really easy way, because I don't think anybody's wrong at this point, but I do benefit when I hear other scholars and consultants talk about it too.
The way that I talk about white supremacy is not so much just, I think a lot of people get focused on white and then just keep equating that to white skin. But that isn't necessarily what it is. It is the idea of whiteness. And whiteness is this idea of purity and superiority, being better than other marginalized groups. And in order to sustain being better than those groups, you have to continuously push those groups down. So whoever is considered white at the time or aiding and abetting whiteness at that time is part of the system that is white supremacy. So I kind of think of it like, I think of it like, I guess a metaphor is like the old Donkey Kong game. Like white supremacy is Donkey Kong at the top, and all of the little pillars or the things that we talk about is what white supremacy is throwing down to make sure that no one is able to rise up to where it is. And every once in a while, white supremacy will allow people to assimilate into it. But white supremacy tries to assimilate the most amount of people to amass the most power in the shortest amount of time. So whatever leads to that is the way that it's going to go. Like we saw this with early on, the melting pot that is the United States. We saw this quite a lot. And
Yeah.
with groups being brought in. This is where we hear the old kind of myth of, the Irish were slaves too. Like, nah, they weren't, not really. Because shortly after indentured servants that were from Ireland came, white supremacy figured out, like, hey, we should assimilate them because we have a lot of black people that we brought here and they're starting to outnumber us and we don't like that. So we're going to have to start turning some other people not who were not white. We're going to have to start turning them white. We saw this happen with the Irish, the Italian, Greeks, Jewish people. We saw it happen throughout history. We saw it happen with lighter skinned Middle Eastern people or like Indian people. I can't remember the case, but there was a case. There was a Supreme Court case that actually decided whether or not people from India were considered white or not. Mm-hmm. And this happens, throughout history.
But got seen thin, right? He went to the Supreme Court. But what was interesting was 4 months beforehand, a Japanese man, Takao Ozawa, went to the Supreme Court petitioning for citizenship. But back then, you could only be white or black. So you had to petition under one of those races. And Takao Ozawa petitioned under white because he had fair skin, he had straight hair, and they denied him because he didn't have shared ancestry. So Bhagat Singh then knew of that case, went to the same bench, all the justices were the same. And then he goes and he says, look, you said it's about shared ancestry. I come from the Caucasus region of the world. You're Caucasian. My people are technically Caucasian. They denied him because he didn't fit the common sense definition of white.
Yes, that's exactly the case that I was thinking of. So yes, it's wild to me that this even happens like this, but this is how you get multiple groups or multiple people that are able to aid and abet white supremacy, despite not appearing traditionally, like colloquially, white at the time. But okay, so we just talked about like how you would have to petition for citizenship between whiteness and blackness, and I've heard a lot of scholars say that blackness is not a reflection of whiteness, but blackness has to exist to be the antithesis to whiteness. Whiteness can't exist without a foe, per se.
Exactly.
Is that kind of a fair assessment, or and like how would you define, I guess, blackness in that case?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said. I think whiteness and blackness are almost like these specters that were invented. But whiteness absolutely relies on not only blackness being close, but blackness being opposite. Or else whiteness completely disappears, right? I think given that, in this kind of universe of existence, I think blackness is supposed to be, unhuman. Blackness is supposed to be unintelligent. Blackness is supposed to be amoral, not hardworking, in need of a benefactor. And I think that is what whiteness requires of blackness in order to be anything at all. It doesn't exist, without this definition, the so-called polar opposite. I think we know that's not true. Obviously, we live in a world where we are actually whole people, and blackness is just a label that we not only live under, but we thrive under. But I think that's literally it. People feel less white when they don't have folks to oppress. Their whiteness feels challenged, right? I think we see that in the LGBTQ community, where you see certain folks saying we don't want to be associated with our trans siblings. There's a reason why they are trying to oppress people who are close to them, because their whiteness starts to feel like it's kind of fleeting, Right. So I actually don't define blackness. I define whiteness as kind of this criminal, oppressive identity. I don't see whiteness as a culture. I know you don't either. But I see it as like the inheritor of violence and capitalism and oppression. And you shed culture to take on whiteness.
Exactly. Yeah, I think you and I just I think you and I just made some videos about the same concept. Whiteness is the rejection of culture. We see this constantly. Like it is nearly constant because whenever black folk want to do anything that is cultural, it is always opposed by whiteness. But in the same breath, like I always ask people, especially like in the city that I live in the surrounding area, we have a huge Italian population, huge Polish population. So we do Dingus Day, which is coming up in a couple of days. We do Italian festival and things like that. Dingus Day is a big Polish festival, and it celebrates Polish culture. It's cool. I mean, it great. Awesome. I love people who celebrate their culture. But I think it's very interesting that when we talk about like those holidays, like Dingus Day, St. Patrick's Day, Oktoberfest, or anything like that, when we talk about those days and those cultural events, they're never categorized as cultural events. You see shirts and things like everybody's Irish on St. Patrick's Day. But they're not. Irish people are Irish, and that's okay to celebrate your culture. A celebration is not an exclusion, but whiteness can't function outside of the realm of being exclusive and being exclusatory. So we have the whiteness has to exclude others in order to exist. So like you said, there has to be some kind of a opposite.
Yeah.
The white man's burden.
In addition to being a consultant, I'm a writer. I write short stories mostly, but I also write poetry, and a volume I'm working on is called Absorb All Light, as another way of saying black, right? That blackness is like potentially, I guess in science, right? The shade black is a container of all, right? And I love thinking about how we have been able to live and thrive in this hostile territory and really kind of contain all that is still good. I have little ones coming downstairs. Hey, 1 second.
You're fine.
How do you spell shoes? SHOES. HOES. Yep, you got it. Kindergarten.
So cute.
Yeah, I think about how in a generation and a half, you talked about our Irish folks, our Italian folks, in a generation and a half, they did what needed to be done to be accepted here, right? You change your name, you hide your religion, you play your music.
I think you got muted there.
Play your music softer and softer. You change your dress. You vote Republican. You join systems that oppress other people. Right? In order to prove that my culture is no longer going to define me. Whiteness is now going to define me. And I feel so sorry for the people who had to go through that. But they knew that anti-blackness was part of that, and they participated in anti-blackness processes and systems in order, like, you can do lots of things to prove your whiteness, but anti-blackness has to be there. You have to be anti-black to be accepted by white people. You can mix it up in other ways, but you got to seal the deal with anti-blackness, and that's unfortunate. And now you have their descendants who are missing out on language and missing out on recipes and missing out on music because of what their great grandparents and grandparents chose to do. Right? Can you see me okay? Is my signal coming through? Okay, good. Because my phone is still ringing, so it's it's annoying. But yeah, I feel compassion for those folks, but at the same time, not at the expense of what was done to my ancestors to prop up yours. You know, I I have to draw the line.
Yeah, exactly. And you've talked about. There's a little bit of a echo happening here. Do I got you back? I think I got you back.
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect.
Let's see.
So you've talked in your videos about something that when it first hit my ears, I was like, "Ooh, that feels strange a little bit." That's a strange way to phrase it. But then your explanation was wonderful, and I never thought about it like that. So we've been kind of touching on this a little bit, but you've talked about the intimacy of white supremacy and how white supremacy needs blackness to exist. So we've talked about the fact that it needs some sort of antithesis to be compared to all the time. But when you talked about how it's an intimate moment, or it has to be that very close, what did you mean by that?
I was looking on Twitter, and you know, folks in southern states and like very red states are always threatening to secede. And I always see folks in the thread saying, "Leave, we don't want you." And I'm like, you think if these states secede, they're going to let us leave? Not a chance. If these states secede, they're going to make us stay. And I believe that. I stand 10 toes on that, because there has never been an era in white supremacy in the United States where Black people were not there, right? We hear about enslaved women breastfeeding white child masters. Literally, like, how much more intimate can you get with someone's child, right? We know about the depraved crimes against Black bodies, but also having someone who you oppress cook your food. The level of audacity gives you that warm sense of elitism, right? I'm going to oppress you. I'm going to sell your children. I'm going to physically beat you, and worse. And then you will make me dinner, and I'm going to look away. I'm not even going to worry about what you're doing to my dinner, right? You all outnumber me by 100, and I'm going to sleep in my bed at night. That's the type of audacity that I think white supremacists desire. So that's kind of what made me make that video. I think that level of intimacy is really, it remains a goal, right? And then someone else said, it's not just about intimacy, it's about being gleeful, right? And having the people around you perform contentment. Then you made a video this week about this woman talking about enslaved people enjoyed, right, being slaves. And then she was really, really trying to like die on that hill.
Yeah.
And it shocked me.
Yeah. She doubled down online, and that the thing I mentioned it briefly in that video, because the point of the video was talking about the fact that we have a lot of people who try to be allies or try to align themselves that way, but they end up using inadvertent or subliminal white supremacist tactics in order to still use the labor of Black people in order to further their own agenda. Like, watching that debate made me so angry, because all I kept thinking was, out of your entire 2-hour or whatever long debate, this 5-minute conversation about Black people is the part that went viral. Like, y'all didn't do anything else. And it is awful as like, I have to, like, I hate, yes, it was a very long debate. They typically are very long. But I was like, it's unfortunate that I have to agree with the person that's being racist. But the first thing that she said is, why are we even talking about this? And she's right. Why did they bring that up at all? And I think it's this, like you said, this need, this desire to always be comparing yourself to blackness, to black people. That is the negative thing. That is the bad part of the world, society. Because you could have talked about, I don't think I can even say the word, the H word that happened during World War II. That word, she could have easily used that as the same example, and it would have had the same point. But they didn't do that. They didn't bring that up. And I think it's because whenever there's something to kind of grasp at, it's like, oh, we have to use blackness. Blackness is going to be the thing that people that somebody would agree with. Everyone's going to agree that racism is bad, and then we'll all look good. I was actually talking to Sunny Day earlier today, and she was saying it's the audacity for that person to believe that her opponent in this debate wasn't going to just say something racist back to her is a very interesting thing. Like, she thought for sure that they were going to agree on this, but white supremacy needs to be anti-black, even if it doesn't really make sense in that context. And that was kind of the point of that video, was that the black people seem to be a topic even when we're not there. Even when we're not in the room, we seem to be obsessed over and talked about. Whether or not you love black people or hate black people, or we should teach black history or we shouldn't teach black history, or we should have these things or not. It feels like we can't stop talking about it, even if black people want to be like, I want to do this. If you think that you're gonna secede, go ahead. We'll be fine. We'll be fine all by ourselves. Yeah.
Take on that, because that nuance is really interesting. Even the people who claim to like be so learned, you're right. Number one, they're borrowing our labor, right? Because the arguments against racism are so well developed, and so the labor is being borrowed. But I think you're right. Like, why are we in it? Why? I mean, we're already in conversations about trans, right? We're already there. So why then make it a conversation solely about slavery, unless you are trying to use us, I don't know, as a bedrock of social justice arguments? You're trying to use this as a scapegoat to get like a scandalous segment on the debate. Mm-hmm. You're like, what's the real reason?
Yeah, like I kind of pointed out, like the title of the video, or like the message behind it, was like, once you see it, you can't unsee it. And I wanted to kind of expose this fact that it's something I've been seeing for the year and a half or so that I've been on this app, and even before that with YouTube videos and things like that. White debaters oftentimes use their moral baseline as anti-blackness. And the thing I think is ironic is, usually these type of debates are always with almost polar opposite people. So if you have somebody who's far on the left or in social justice world, your opponent is typically very conservative, not in social justice world, and would almost always disagree with you on most things. So bringing up anti-blackness as a point of moral baseline, you're gonna disagree on that, because they would never think that. Because like you said earlier, white supremacy feeds off of being anti-black. That is part of it. You can't, it has to go, it goes hand in hand. So as soon as you bring up anti-blackness as being the moral baseline, like that's where we start. We can agree that being anti-black is bad. You're gonna have a fight, and that's where it makes me kind of roll my eyes and go, what the hell's the point of this?
I feel like you're giving a baptism right now. I love that. I love it when people like you, aka people like us, learn to be annoyed at stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, of course, I'm annoyed at anti-Black racism. Yes, I know. But I think you encourage us to be smarter when you make sure we're annoyed at these kind of gray area moments, right? Where it's like, but shouldn't we be upset that this person is using us as leverage to jumpstart a really raucous debate?
Right.
Okay. I feel like I'm
Like,
having an Oprah aha moment.
the thing I want to get people to understand, or I guess the epiphany that I want everyone to have, is that racism and white supremacy aren't individual acts of meanness or unkindness. It isn't just this one person and what they did at this one time. It's the mentality behind it. Because the messed up part is, to be honest, the person who was leading the debate probably thinks that they were doing something good, probably thinks they were making a good point to be helpful, and they weren't, because it's still white supremacy is still so ingrained in everyday actions that when you bring up blackness, you inadvertently
2016.
use black labor in order to make your point. Because this wasn't like I called them out for this as well. Their defense, I watched that whole clip and I'm like, you lost that part of the debate. Like, you didn't even win that. And you brought this up and you weren't equipped to have this conversation, but you were so damn sure that you were, because you've read books we wrote. You've listened to podcasts that we host. You've listened to talks that we give. So because you've learned through osmosis all this stuff, but you don't have any learned experience, you can't speak to the mentality of blackness existing in America at any time. So you can't ask that question, how did black people feel about slavery? Because you ain't black. You don't know how black people feel about racism. You can't even fathom it. But I'm watching two white people have a conversation about how black people feel about being enslaved at a point in America. And I'm like, y'all don't got nothing to do with this.
I love comments are like, what are y'all talking about?
What are y'all talking about?
Intimacy is the name of the intimacy and white black anti-blackness. Just answer the question in the comments. I love it when, just literally what I said, like training ourselves to be annoyed at the things that still push us in the wrong direction. I think that's a really helpful, like, it's a call in for me and a reminder, because when I do these sessions, people are always throwing bait, right, to pull you in the wrong direction, right? And so much of the work is really blatantly telling people that's not going to work here, right? You don't get to bait me in the wrong direction, or you don't get to misrepresent. Like, sound and pantomime real anti-racism when it's not. You can't do that here.
Right. So, right. That's not gonna hold up.
Yeah. About the intimacy, and this is something I think about too, is like, a lot of times people wonder, what does it look like in modern times, right? Intimacy during the height of slavery is really obvious. And I think intimacy during kind of Jim Crow, like the height of Jim Crow, is obvious. I'd be curious your thoughts about what does intimacy look like now. I mean, I have my thoughts.
Okay, I could go first. I thought of something as soon as you said it. I thought of what it immediately is.
But I want
in my opinion, intimacy right now in this age of tech and things like that is digital blackface. is what it looks like.
Fancy.
My good brother Black Thinker just sent me a video of I don't know if you've seen this, the new AI voice modification, like AI things that they do, where you can basically have any rapper that you want, and there's a completed Jay-Z song that's completely done by an AI. And yeah, this is a Jay-Z song completely done by AI. It is not Jay-Z. It is a white man that made a Jay-Z song. And it sounds like Jay-Z. Like if I heard it on the radio, I'd be like, "Oh, this new Jay track is dope." But as we were kind of philosophizing and discussing like the macro view of this, or like the meta analysis of what this is, it occurred to us that like this is the worst case scenario, because we've gotten to a point and talked about digital blackface a lot over the past few years, and it started off simple with profile pictures and things like that, but now with things like ChatGPT, you can almost authentically have in text a black voice. And then with this other technology that is voice technology, you can have ChatGPT write a black sounding voice and then use a black person's voice to be whoever you want to be. And to me, this isn't far-fetched. Somebody did it. They already did this. That's what that Jay-Z song is, and we're praising it, and I'm just like, this is the guys, we're living in the end times. What are you talking about? Like we're creating a situation where black people are commodified to a point out of existence.
Yeah.
And to me, that's what the intimacy looks like. It is not enough to be around black people. You have to be black people. And I think it's a very scary thing that we're in, like we're living in. I can't even say it's the future. It's today. Like the songs, like these examples exist right now. It's not future tech. This is what's happening.
Yeah, I never even thought about, I mean, digital blackface is super annoying and I despise it, but I never thought about that as a representation of intimacy. And it makes me curious, right? Because we know white supremacy is such a flimsy lie. We know that. We know this idea that white people are superior. It just doesn't hold water. It's as durable as Kleenex. But I do still find it baffling when white people desire to embody black people. I find it baffling that you want to be black when you could easily just be a much better version of yourself. Like that's like if you are someone running Chat GPT, right? Because these people are billionaires overnight. It always happens when people come up with this new tech. Does it never occur to you to pour innovation into like your own likeness? It never occurs to folks on the internet to say, I have all of this power at my disposal. Let me flex and show you just how fabulous I am. It's always let me go after a black kind of level up. I find that to be baffling. And these are things that kind of keep my wheels turning at night. The idea that I think about in modern intimacy, which is not super modern, but is sports. We see it time and time again in sports, how the owner structure, the coach structure, especially in football, when you have the quarterback is an intellectual position. Like people will say it without even catching themselves. Like they say it so quickly that they don't even have time to catch themselves when they say it. Like, why are there so few black quarterbacks when black men are overwhelmingly the majority in the NFL? And before they can catch themselves, oh, well, the quarterback's an intellectual position. It never fails. 10 times out of 10. Right? And then, of course, we see what's happening with the women's basketball tournament and this entitlement to punish, this entitlement to corral and control these black athletes. It's so automatic. And it's like, like, I know you see it and I know you're having a good time, like reliving this master fantasy, but it always surprises me when people just completely show themselves. I think that type of intimacy is really important. I wrote a short story years ago that I just published last year, about a white woman who's being ignored. That's the whole premise. She's not being bullied. No one is talking mean or nasty to her, not close, but she's not being coddled. She's not being served in a way that makes her feel special. And it just sends her into deeper and deeper trauma. That is the white woman's trauma, right? Being ignored. And that theme, it just shines so brightly in my mind because I'm constantly thinking about the intimacy that white people require of Black people. I I think sports is my primary example, but now I'm thinking about this digital blackface. I did hear that one of the first successful AI campaigns where people were fooled was a Black model, right? People create a Black model, and they're like, now you can have a Black model and you never have to pay a Black person because you created her.
Yeah. I earlier this year got in this weird argument on TikTok with a like those Photoshop videos and things like that. It was a person taking a stock image of a white person and turning them black. And I was like, why would you ever need to do this? What would the situation be that you would ever need to do this? And the response was, well, if you can't find a Black model. And I'm like, what are you talking? There's Black people all over the place. What are you talking about? Like, but you're using a stock image anyway. Just search Black people. Like, what are we doing? But it was, it was unfathomable to him. He was just like, no, this is the way that you would do it. You would turn a white person black because I found the white person that's doing the thing that I want, and I turn them black because I need them to be black. But you know, you just turn you take a good white person who's a model or actor or whatever, and then you make them black, and then you know it serves the thing, and that has been just sticking in my head, like it turning white people into Black people. We've seen it with the arguments over the past year with braids. We've seen it with the arguments over like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And I think that is what the intimacy is turning into, is like we said earlier, to kind of circle back around to a topic that we brought up a little bit ago, is the primary function of white supremacy is assimilation, and this is no different. Mm-hmm. But they can't assimilate Black people. They love it when Black people sort of assimilate themselves. Like they love a Candace Owens and like a Kanye. Like they love it when they service whiteness, but they want to be Black. They don't want Black people to be white. They want to be Black because they want all the things that come along with that. I forgot who coined the phrase, but you hear it all the time. They want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues.
Exactly.
And yeah, that's all I can ever think about with those things, because I've just seen it especially on this large social media app that a ton, almost half the country uses. We see it constantly. Black people start a trend that's in the Black community, that's an inside joke for Black culture, and within seconds, it is commodified by white people, and they're doing it on Ellen.
And used all wrong, and don't even. That's the thing, that you ain't even take the time to get it right. You messed it up. I was talking about this. I was talking to some folks last week. I don't know if you remember this show from the 90s called Third Rock from the Sun.
Yes.
Okay. So you remember the premise of the show. I have not watched the show in literally 2 decades, but there's one scene on this show that has never left my brain, and that's a scene where, you know, the two olders, the dad and the sister, I guess, they played off like they were siblings. And they never took the time to learn how to be human. They just figured, I'll just get it right. That was what was interesting to me about them. They never wanted to learn how to be human. And so when the pizza guy delivers the pizza, she takes it and she holds it like this, sideways, and she takes it upstairs. They open the pizza's messed up, and they blame the delivery guy. They say, oh, he messed it up again. This scene from the Sun has never left my brain. And I was just sitting down. I was like, that is just like when white people culturally appropriate. Not only do they they see us holding something, not only do they just snatch it, they never once open to investigate. They never want to see the substance, the history, the nuance. They just want it, and they just take it. And then when they try to use it, they look foolish. And never once have they learned their lesson. Do some research. And that kind of connects to what you're saying about this ally who initiated a conversation and out of nowhere started talking about slavery. Like, do you even know how to use slavery in a conversation about, LGBTQ oppression? Because there is a relevance, but you don't seem to know it. Not really.
Exactly.
I've looked for that scene of Thorough. I cannot find it. Me and my business partner, we looked for like an hour each. We can't find it. Apparently some Redditors have talked about it. So if I can find the Reddit thread with the episode number, I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you. But I have never forgotten about that scene. I think you're so right. Like you just take what we have. But I am really thinking about this idea that they want to be us. Because here's my pushback, my question to that. If you assume a Black identity online, let's say I have 2 Twitter accounts and one of them is this Black person, right? Mm-hmm. Are you using it just to disrupt other Black people, or are you hoping to live and be treated as a Black person really authentically? Because no one would want that, would they? Not really.
I think they want the Sims version of it. They honestly, I think it's this concept, like this almost like a Matrix kind of concept. Like they want to, like we just said, they want our rhythm but not our blues. They want to step into the coolness. They see Black people leading American culture. Like, let's call a thing a thing. Like they see Black culture being almost synonymous with what American culture is. Like, I mean, even take the radio of the last few years. There was a time when you listened to a top 40 station in the 90s and it was filled with white guys in their 20s playing pop rock music, and I loved it. And now you hear Black people playing R&B, or you hear Black people playing funk or bringing back Motown classics. You hear that, and then we got the assimilation. You get Katy Perry doing a song, doing a song with Juicy J. You get Ariana Grande completely changing her entire look and in her music style and completely just diving into being a R&B diva, even so much so as to literally change the tone of her skin and try to be racially ambiguous on purpose and by design. I don't think it's necessarily just to cause trouble. I think it is this idea that they want to embody it. And I think the best example that we've seen kind of recently, this sort of viral moment. Remember, it was like a couple of months ago, there was this white woman that kept her hair in braids, and she put on this affect, this vocal Black scent, and she had her hair in braids, and it was this whole thing. This woman shouldn't have her hair in braids, and yes she should, no she shouldn't, yes she should, no she shouldn't. But the one video that sticks with me that she said, when she had her hair out, it was straight. and she took her hair out, and she's making this video. She's walking around the house, and she goes, "See, I don't always have braids. I had to go to a job interview today, and I took the braids out." That that is what that's what it means to want to embody blackness but not be black, because she knows if she does black stuff at a job interview, she might not get that job. So she got to be white when she go to the job interview so she can get the job. But she wants to be black when she's sitting at home talking like this and doing like that's the really thing.
Very good impression. Spot on. I think
but it's this caricature. They and it I think it comes from a place of entitlement and a faux admiration. I think they think it's appreciating, but they know. They know.
When you said they want our cool, I think you sold me, because there is a cool factor that does not translate, right? You can't. People talk about certain people or the brown-eyed soul. I don't buy it. I never have. Like when I think about, blue-eyed soul, the white guy who've been able to like embody our cool. I never bought it. Like, you're a great person. Tina Marie was a fantastic singer, a lover. Mariah Carey's a fantastic singer, entertainer. But I don't buy that she has fully taken on our cool. I don't think Tina Marie has her own version of cool, right? And all the other kind of like blue-eyed soul people, like, it's whatever brand you have is fire, but it's not us. And I'm wondering if that idea of cool has to be baked in with like living in it and being in it. But I think, you sold me, like they desire both, and they want to maintain all of the entitlement, but the fun, right? And the hype they desire to have. I don't think it'll work. I think it'll back.
No. And that's the only thing that is so frightening, but it's also very telling as to the first uses of this technology. Like this this new AI generated technology. It is very telling to me that the first humans that we're trying to imitate are black people. And it's white people that are doing it. That's the part where I'm like, they're not going to be able to. It'll be digital blackface. They're not going to be able to pull it off in their everyday life because they can't. But they'll create a black persona. They made a completely. This was a couple months ago, and then it started being racist because, of course, it did. It was made by white guys, but there was a completely AI rapper. This technology isn't super new. The voice modulation thing is the part that's new. Having a rapper or having an AI create rap music isn't new at all.
Right.
But having it sound just like Jay-Z or just like Kendrick Lamar or just like Kanye West, that is new. And that's the part that's almost scary, is because like, why? Like, that's all I think is why are you doing it? But he was I can't think of his name or like what the name of the thing was, but it was this completely like character. It was like a robot thing, and it had a TikTok account, it had an Instagram account, it had a complete online persona. Wow. But it was being black people. Like it was embodying black culture. And I think it's super interesting that when Americans did this, they immediately made a black caricature. But in Japanese culture, they've been doing this for the better part of 2 decades.
I've noticed
and they're always their culture. Like it's always a Japanese pop singer or like musician or whatever it is that is this digital persona. And we've heard of these things before. The only one that I can really think of that stuck to being itself, but even them, they used rappers, is the Gorillas. That was kind of the first one that tipped on like it's going to be completely digital creation. It's not a real band. There's a real band behind it, but you never see those people or those guys. It's just completely embodied online.
Yeah. Yeah, I think wow. I pray I pray we have a little bit of a backlash against AI, a little bit of a retreat. And I think it's possible, but also the more we attach get rich quick, we might find ourselves kind of swept away with it. I know me and my people, when we say we're going outside more to avoid a lot of these trappings, we mean it, right? We are going outside to avoid being tricked and fooled and used. But I think once you talk about it in this sense, because it's almost replacing your accountability to Black people in analog because you're creating your own Black people in digital. So now I don't have accountability to it because Black people are always trying to hold me accountable. If I create my own Black people and I make money, then I no longer have accountability. So I get all of the rhythm and none of the blues, I guess. Right?
Right.
That's a really chipper note.
The one thing that I do really hope for is that hopefully this is just shiny and it becomes fleeting, because there'll be a point where, you know, folks like us won't be able to, the idea is that we won't be able to tell the difference. Like right now, it's pretty easy for us to tell like digital blackface, call it out pretty immediately.
Yeah.
But the technology is becoming so sophisticated that you won't be able to tell. But then what the hell is the point? I think it'll get boring is my ultimate point. I think if a white person is able to embody a Black person completely and fool the world, then what's the point?
Yeah.
Because like you said, at a certain point, y'all gonna run into the stuff that Black folk run into. Yeah. Y'all gonna run into, like, keeping with the example of a rapper, y'all gonna run into trying to sell your music to A&R folk and getting passed over. And just curious why. This thing, it's not gonna stay fun. Because once it becomes too convincing, then you get all the other stuff that comes along with it. You get all the racism. You get your avatar getting called the N-word and all kinds of other stuff. Every day. That's just what your inbox is, or that's what your PO box gets, or that's what I think people will eventually become bored with the ruse, and then they'll hopefully just move on to something else.
Yeah. And it's also boring when you can't oppress real people. I think that's the other part too. I think the oppression is so incredibly precious to them that if you're inventing all the people, the oppression part goes away too. And so I think that's a sinister way in which it could kind of backlash against you, is that I'm missing out on that feeling of being superior because I created these products, right? So I hope you're right, and I'm so glad the conversation about white supremacy includes tech the way it does, because tech is now such a determiner of how we engage as a society. I love the fact that people like you are like, let's make sure we are holding tech accountable and calling out exactly how we see it evolving as well. Because people like me, that's not my ministry, right? Tech is not my ministry. I'm much more analog in the way that I try to understand the world, but I do feel myself kind of without the fluency, the same fluency that people like you have when it comes to tech. Like, I appreciate it because it's kind of pulling me forward into these are areas that need to be studied as well. We talk about digital blackface. My business partner, who is white, digital blackface is like one of her favorite things to call out. Because she's like, they are literally trying to get like the street cred, right? That blackness buys you, right? She saw it before I did when we built our curricula. She's like, we got to talk about digital blackface, and she's maybe because she is white, it shines so much brighter to her how sinister it is. She's like, you got to understand when it comes to digital blackface, they are trying to imitate, you know, this street cred because they think that that kind of currency is really valuable. And it's so funny. We've been best friends for 19 years and now we're business partners. We talk all day, every day. And interestingly enough, being around me, my family, my kids, my parents, everybody has not made her blacker. She doesn't have a black accent. She doesn't like, she doesn't listen to the music I listen to because of proximity to me. She doesn't celebrate in the same way I do. She doesn't go to church or do the things that Black people do just because she's in proximity to a Black woman in her family, right? And maybe that's why she's like, it's incredibly easy to not appropriate someone's culture. She's like, because I actually have a home. She doesn't have, I mean, she's white, so she doesn't have like a culture, but she's Greek. She leans into being Greek, and she's real big on home culture and community culture. She's like, my household is a culture. My family is a culture. But even she's a perfect example. She's not Blacker because she's around me, and she doesn't desire it.
Right.
You know? So this, I mean, I'm scandalized. I'm unnerved, and I'm here. I'm following. My nerves are on 10 listening to this whole tech side of it, but
there's a couple of people pointing out in the comments that like,
down, baby.
This isn't new. The technology is the new part of it, but these are all things that have been in existence this entire time. Like every time they try to remove or replace Black people. Like I made a video sometime last year in the spring, and you know, I was responding to this historian who was talking about like, how come we never talk about like African cultures that built all these like cool things, and like he's showing all these like ancient structures and that are still in existence. He's like, how come the History Channel doesn't ever talk about this? And I responded to him and I said, well, the same reason why we don't talk about the Roman emperors that were Black. They don't believe that we did it.
Alien.
Like it's and there were so many people that commented on that video and were like, what are you talking about? There were no Roman emperors that were Black. And I was like, that's my point. No, you don't even believe this because and you can you can look it up. My wife is Greek, and we talk about, like, me and my father-in-law have talked about North Africans and Greeks sharing cultures because it fortunately existed at a time where race wasn't developed the way that it was. It was more aligned with your nationality. So right. Like your nation state was much more important, especially to Greek culture. So a lot of times it's more like, are you from the mainland or are you from an island? Right. That's more the argument. And me and my wife have been together for almost 12 years now. How old is my kid? Almost 12 years now. And we just realized sometime last year, as I was studying, what book is it? John McWhorter's Talking Back, Talking Black. And I was studying this, and it's a book about AAVE, and we're talking about it. And throughout the book, he gives examples of different parts of AAVE that are very common and that cross into American English, whatever you want to say, standard English, however you want to put that. And he was talking about like a lot of different things that cross over where standard English has picked up things from AAVE, but
Right.
has assimilated it into the colloquialism, and they're used every day, but people don't really notice it. And then things that are particularly from AAV that are confusing to people. And so I was just reading this part of the book to her, and we were talking, and I was like, is this ever been something that's been confusing to you? Like, hey, have you ever been confused by these, like by this sentence or anything like that? And it was funny. Like the example that we were talking about was repetition. You know how black folk we repeat ourselves or repeat a part of a word to have emphasis on that thing. So it's like, oh yeah, well, we gonna go outside. It's like, wait, are we going outside or are we going like outside? That means something different. And I'll never forget it. She had gone to the store. She'd buy my father a birthday cake, and my mother texts her and goes, "Get him a chocolate cake." And she texts back, "Does he want a chocolate cake or like a chocolate cake?" And my mom was like a chocolate cake. And she still laughs about it to this day. But those things of picking up parts of the culture or becoming bilingual because you're immersed in it, that never stopped. We go to the Hellenic Festival every year. We celebrate the Orthodox Easter every year. Like her culture is her culture.
Yes.
She doesn't have an affect or a black scent or anything like that. And she rails against it. It irks her so much to see it. Like I was just thinking of your partner. Like it bothers her so much to see that because all her thought is like, listen, my husband black, my kids are black. I've been in this relationship for over a decade, and I'm not like this. Like. That isn't what you need to be. You don't need to try to embody blackness to appreciate the culture or to celebrate the culture or to even participate in the culture. That isn't what you have to do. And I think there's like a subtle but important difference between those two things. I think I think where white supremacy shines is it tries to assimilate the good parts or take parts of things, constantly pulling and feeling entitled to stuff. Oh my God. Tell somebody that they shouldn't use a sound on TikTok and watch the comments flood in.
Here's where I don't have as much compassion for kind of the gilded cage that white people have built for themselves. Not a lot, but my compassion does come in when certain white people will admit a sense of lack, or they start to feel that lack of culture for those who are fully assimilated into quote unquote American whiteness, right? Like they notice it, right? Someone mentioned on this app, I wish I remember who it was so I could credit them, that like suburbs are quiet because whiteness is a void, right? And quiet is valued because without knowing it, white people have pursued almost like a nothingness, right? And so if you are loud in the suburbs, you are considered disturbing the peace, even if it's your birthday, even if it's a wedding, right? Even if you just graduated or someone just got a promotion or whatever, that's considered disturbing the peace. Or the way you dress is loud and colorful, and that's considered less. Or the way you spell your name, or the way you kind of laugh in public, right, is considered disturbing the peace. And it's almost as if whiteness is in pursuit of like this really nothingness except for superiority. And one of my friend told me, she's like, there is this looking around at everyone else's culture, right? There's this noticing of this embrace of culture. There's a noticing of the food. There's a noticing of other people's music and a noticing of other people's family traditions, especially. right? Like the first time. Okay, I see you. I'm almost done. The first time she came to my birthday party, my best friend, she came to my birthday party. We lived in Arizona. And we sang happy birthday, and then we sang the black version, right? Obviously. And she was stopped in her tracks, and she's like, number one, how is there another birthday song? And number two, why does everyone know it? Right? And then they have black graduation at a lot of schools. At Arizona State, when I got my PhD, we got our PhD at the same time. We sat next to each other. We got hooded by the same person. We had started our graduate journey on the same day. We had worked together. We had partnered together. We graduated on the same day. But there's a black graduation later that day. And she's like, in that moment, I had to walk myself through critical self-reflection because this is my best friend. All of our graduation festivities were together except for this one. Right. And she said, I didn't go because I understand that Black people, love of Black people requires boundaries, not demands intimacy. Right. If you have a Black person in your life that you love, you respect boundaries because there's a sacredness to all Black spaces, blah, blah, blah. But when she talks about it now in our sessions, she's like, I felt the difference of like going to this graduation and having us be together and knowing she was going to a cultural celebration. And I think she openly admits that white people notice the knot. Right. And for some people, it drives them into self-reflection. It drives them into their Greek culture, their Polish culture, Italian culture. For other people, it drives them to just take. Right. You have something I don't have, so I'm just going to take it from you.
Right. Which
I wish I knew this person because it might have been Alina Jean. They were talking a little bit about this quietness. I'm going to go back through their page. This quietness that whiteness requires. But so many people notice it and they will fess up. Like if they've done the work, they'll fess up and say, yeah, like there is an absence of culture and it creates a discomfort and it makes you want to do something about it.
Right. I think it's so interesting to see, and I think it's part of the things that allowed me and my wife to really gel so well together was, so her family, both sides of her family came here later on, almost exclusively post World War II. So, and they were very cultural. She is European Jewish from the Czech Republic, and then and Greek. Very strong cultural folks that came here at a time where white supremacy stopped assimilating Europeans that were coming in. So, from her perspective, everything's always been cultural. Everything's always been, you are who you are and you share that. This void, she almost had to learn that whiteness exists that way. Not that she didn't see it before, but it just doesn't click up here. Like I remember my father met her and met my future father-in-law and met their family. They got the families together. And we were worried that like what my dad was what my Black dad was gonna think. So we're like, what do you think about that family? Huh? You know? And he was like, oh yeah, they're great, they're nice. And we're like, there's nothing you noticed about them that you want to talk about? And he was like, no, what are you talking about? No, no, I don't know. And then my mom was like, it doesn't bother you that they're white? And my dad he had the most confused look on his face. And he went, they're not white.
Wait, they're not white.
And we went, go on. And he goes, she's not white. She's Greek. And we stopped and went, Okay, great. Yes, yes, very good. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And we still tell that story. It's still very funny to us, but their culture shined through. And who they were shine through and holding on to that. They never had that I guess that opportunity to have to dive back into it. It was just this is just who we are, and it never left. And I wish, like, I almost like I feel bad for white folks that are white. And that's what they have. Like, they don't happen to be white. They are white.
Yeah.
And that's all they have as far as their culture, their life, their everything. People who get so angry at cultural events because they can't relate to that concept. Like, Juneteenth becomes a holiday and they lose their minds. And it's like, but I mean, man, we've been doing all your holidays. Or whenever anybody says, oh, there's Black History Month, you know, when is there going to be White History Month? And I go, and I told somebody, I'm like, there's a Polish History Month, there's an Italian History Month, there's a German History Month, there's a, like, what do you pick? Throw a dart, man. Like, where are you from? There's a History Month for you. Like,
But they don't know.
They don't know because it isn't part of who they are or what they are.
They chose to die.
It's very sad. But what do we do? So if you were to give this talk in one of your consultations or something like that, as we kind of get to the end here, we'd like to leave with actionable items. So folks are trying to break out of this kind of repetitive cycle of this of whiteness, I guess. They're starting to recognize their whiteness. They recognize blackness. They see white supremacy, and they want to break out of the cycle. What's something somebody could do?
So I'll tell you in two streams. What we would tell people in our sessions is to lean into community. We would tell people anti-racism is inherently communal. So you absolutely have to get your people. I would tell people to just strap in for the long haul. This isn't about a destination. It's about a lane change. So you are not, number one, supposed to exhaust yourself, but you're also not supposed to expect. Like, we're building a pyramid, not a house, right? Just put your bricks in and know that the apex will be placed at some point. We tell people to study, and we tell people to center Black, queer, femme, disabled people as a rule. I think I know, for example, I know white men who are fairly well off, middle class or better, who have white male reading groups, and all they do is talk about anti-racism. But they don't blast it. They're not on social media talking about it, but they meet up. They have buddies, they partner, and they show the work in their jobs. They're pushing for things in their jobs. I would tell people that it's a journey, and it's tough and it's hard, and community is there to support you when it gets, even like the reading, like when I'm reading critical race theory, that shit is hard. Like, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a trained attorney. So when I read critical race theory, I read it with a friend. It's literally that simple.
Right.
What I tell Black people is, I say, lean into boundaries. Limit your time kind of with white people that are not on the journey, and not in a mean or aggressive way, but really in a quiet turning inward to community type of way, right? I definitely don't seek out diversity at all. If I need rest or respite, I go around people who are anti-racist. I go around people who are dismantling, especially in the Black community, who are dismantling queerphobia, period. And I think we have to really be brave and say, all safe spaces, whatever safety means to you, we have to up it. I do think people should reject social media just enough to where we're recapturing healing in different places, healing in nature, healing with Western medicine mixed with some ancestral medicine. I'm real big on that right now, and I'm using myself as an example. Yeah, I don't think diversity is the way to go if it's not white people who are down for you. Period. I just don't. And I think Black people have been like the torchbearers of diversity, and we have to integrate. We have to have this like universal peace, and we have to be the stewards of it. And I think that's a failed experiment. So I think find the white people or the non-Black people who are absolutely down for the cause and add them into your safe spaces. Stop championing this like worldwide diversity at your own expense. Everyone says it. I think leaning into rest and leaning into healing. I don't know how to rest, so I'm preaching to myself. My therapist literally said, like, you don't have to earn rest. You don't have to say, oh, I had such a tough day today, I'm going to go to bed early. She's like, that's one way to rest. But what if you rest first thing in the morning? And I was like, that sounds whack. She was like, I've heard somebody say that, but it doesn't even compute in my brain. But I believe in what other people are telling me. I don't know what rest when not exhausted looks like. But I'm leaning into that. And I do think in the age of like coming out of the pandemic, as long as we're caring for our bodies and we're COVID safe, I do think people should get out into society and nature in an analog way. More and more and more. I don't care if it's walking, hiking, coffee, walking the dog. Get with a person and get outside.
Right.
That was a list. What did I miss though? Like, are there things that you tell people or that you do? Because I'm constantly taking notes.
I also agree to say be kind to yourself. I think and take breaks. Anti-racism work is exhausting for a lot of reasons. And by breaks, I mean know yourself and your mental health and what you can handle, and then get to that limit, and then take a break, take a rest. And yeah, like you said, sometimes this is the same thing my therapist says. Turn off the news, man. Put the phone down. Relax for a moment. Do something else. Watch TV or go for a walk, or get your brain out of get your brain out of whatever kind of space that you're in that's oftentimes so negative, because anti-racism work is traumatic. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. Or they aren't expecting it to be so much, because it's dismantling a lot of things. But real quick, I just want to touch on something, because I want to echo something that you said, but I'm watching some of the things go back and forth in the comments. So the things that we are suggesting here are mostly applying to white folks that want to better themselves, but I want to echo what you were saying. Forced diversity is not the goal. Assimilation is not the goal. By just like default. That isn't the point. If you can be multiracial without being multicultural. And I think a lot of times we end up being multiracial. There's just black people and white people in a room together, but we're not multicultural. We're not celebrating the individual cultures. And the celebration of individual cultures is not necessarily the exclusion of other cultures or the negativity assigned to other cultures. Celebrating blackness is not saying that anybody Italian people are bad or anything like that. That is not ever the point or anything that we're saying. So I just wanted to kind of clear that up, because there was a few people saying in the comments that were saying like, oh, it seems like we're asking for allies or anything like that. I don't even like the word accomplice anymore. I'm tired of that word, because they ran that word into the ground too. Like, they started saying allies, and then we said, hey, you can't call yourself that. Like, you can't assign that to yourself. That has to be from the group. And they'll go, okay, we'll be accomplices. And then it's like, stop calling yourself shit, man. Like, just kind of cut it out for a second. Come when you're called for.
When boxes are so tight, you have to make labels to break out of the box, and another label and another label, and it's like we don't have to have labels to do the work. We could just do the work. Yeah. What can I call?
But and this is not like, I cannot stress or hammer this enough for Black folk that are listening and watching. This is not a call for you to do more labor. This is not a call for you to do more labor. We choose to educate. If I can speak for you, Erica, we choose to educate. We choose to put ourselves in this position. White folks, not every Black person wants to teach you shit. Black folks, not every white person needs to be taught shit. If you don't ever want to talk about this with white people, don't. It's traumatic. Like I said, it brings up a lot of stuff, and it brings up things. You're dismantling or analyzing your own trauma and dealing with it and healing from it. You don't have to do that with an audience, and that is not the suggestion at all.
It isn't.
So,
getting paid. If you do any work in diverse or white spaces, you should be getting paid top dollar, bottom, bare minimum.
Yes.
Like, I do pro bono work for people of color, queer people, disabled people. When white people ask me to do work, they're paying. And if it's an all white audience, I don't do it at all. My business partner, she goes solo and she does it. Because this hurt that I get from all white spaces is not worth the fee. So if it's an all group, my business partner flies solo, and we still split the fee. He shows up.
Great. Perfect. I love that.
The money issue for us is de-emphasized. Not everyone can do it like that, but you get my point, right? Like, I 100%, and I wish more Black people would reconsider the labor, or at least double how much you charge. Charge more at the very least. At the very, very least, double your hourly fee. Like, right now, go to your website, take your hourly fee and double it. I pray that to every Black anti-racist consultant, researcher, scholar, facilitator. Go to your website right now, double your fee at the very minimum.
I mean, in this economy, absolutely. But before I let you get out of here, just repeat one more time for folks your name, what you do, plug the website and all that stuff, and where people can find you on the socials and all that.
Thank you. I love the fact you give me an opportunity to do that. So my name is Erica Nicole Griffin. My website, just for consulting, anti-racism consulting, is Monday Morning Consultants. That's the name of my company, Monday Morning Consultants. It's kind of easy to remember. On TikTok, I'm nicole. On Twitter, EN_Griffin. It's a much older EN_Griffin. And yeah, I so enjoy being here. I'm so grateful. I don't go on live often, so this is a really fantastic moment. Sorry, I have little kids in the background. It's spring break, so
it's okay. It's all right.
Of giggles and laughs and cartoons in my house for the week. And yeah, I'm just excited to be part of the TikTok community of these Black creators and these anti-racist creators. I love it, and I want more engagement like this.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to have had you here. Thank you so much for coming on and hanging out with me. We're definitely gonna have to circle back, and we
Yeah.
could have kept talking for hours, but so we got more to say. We'll definitely circle back and do this again. But thank you
Yes.
so much for hanging out. Thanks everybody for being in the live and hanging out. We love you and have a good evening.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Conscious Environment Podcast. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed recording it for you. And thank you again to Erica Nicole Griffin for putting that in my brain. I had never thought about the idea of white supremacy being intimate with the BIPOC people that it oppresses, but it's very much so true, as you found out through that conversation. So thank you again for bringing that up to me. If you want to support the show, you can do so financially. There are Cashapp and Venmo links down below, as well as a Patreon link down below and some merch links down below. If you can't support us financially, please don't worry about that. A 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Music, or just tell your friends, tell your mama. It'll be her favorite podcast. I'm positive about that. And just one last thing that I have to always remind you. I feel like I have to remind you guys of this every single week, but I really, really mean it. Please go drink water, like right now. Go and drink water right now. And remember, I love you. All right, I'll see you guys next week.